Story 1. I had that shift before and it was honestly the best. 3 days off to do whatever. It was Monday through Thursday. Story 2. I would prefer a 4-day, 8-hour work week, which is beginning to appear in some places. Story 3. Why work 10-hour days when it is proven that 4 8-hour workdays are as productive as 5 8-hour workdays? Hours 9 and 10 in a 10-hour day would be a complete write-off for me. Story 4. I have done the schedule. On paper, it seems great. You get a long weekend every week. What is not to love? But you lose 2 hours a night. That might not seem like much, but when you have a family with children, it is a lot. Those 2 hours were your entire meal preparation time, your downtime, or your shopping time. They were the time you commuted to and from work, or the time it took to pick up the children and get them home and settled with their homework. Now, for 4 days a week, your time is compressed. Chores and shopping trips get cut. Your children might spend extra time in paid care. Maybe you now pay for a meal service because you start at 8 in the morning but finish at 6 in the evening and will not be home until 7 in the evening, so food is a scramble. Then Friday comes around and you roll out of bed to a house that needs vacuuming. An overflowing laundry hamper, bills to pay, phone calls to make, appointments to keep, and shopping trips to finish. So yes, it sounds great, but you do not get more time. You still have 168 hours in the week and 24 hours in the day to get things done. Only now you have 2 fewer hours of flexible time 4 days a week. It can work out well if a partner picks up the slack on your longer days, but only if they are able to. I cannot imagine 2 people both working 4 10-hour days per week managing well if they have children or long commutes. Story 5. I hate 10-hour days. Why do workplaces need 40 hours from their employees? It is an outdated concept from a bygone era. Story 6. If you have a long commute to work, it would be beneficial because you would spend less time commuting. Regarding productivity, I think mine would decrease. 8 hours feels like a lot, and 10 feels even more so. Story 7. As someone working 4 10-hour shifts, it is pretty awesome, except I have to work on Saturday nights. Having a 3-day work week is nice. I am sure it is not an option for every job, but if it is, you should take it. Story 8. I worked a 4 10-hour schedule when I was a technician for Comcast, and my days off were consecutive. I worked Wednesday through Saturday for 8 years out of 13. I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I enjoyed the 3-day weekends. On the other hand, those extra 2 hours at the end of the day dragged. I worked 7:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. On workdays, I felt I had very little personal time, and it did not balance out for me, even though I technically had more time off during the week. I now work a second shift factory job. My nights fly by so fast, and when I get home at 1 a.m. it is quiet and I have enough time for myself and the silly things I like doing. Bottom line, I will take a normal Monday through Friday. Story 9. No thanks. I would take 35 hours over 5 days rather than 40 hours over 4 days. Story 10. I thought the goal was a 32-hour, 4-day work week with no reduction in pay or benefits. Story 11. I recently started this schedule. Sunday to Wednesday, 2 o'clock in the morning to 12:30 in the afternoon, with a 30-minute unpaid break and a 30-minute paid break. My honest opinion is that 40 hours a week is just too much. I feel I would be just as productive with an additional 90 minutes of unpaid break that could be allocated as needed depending on what is happening at the job. Story 12. School hours make this difficult. It would require teachers and, more importantly, students to be able to manage that duration. Story 13. I work Monday through Thursday, and it works well. On Fridays, I mow the lawn, do chores, and get haircuts. That frees up my weekend to enjoy myself. My coworkers also have fewer days off. If there is a lot of work, we sometimes come in on Fridays as overtime. It is a nice work-life balance. Story 14. It is optional in my job, and most of my teammates chose it. I declined because I would leave work too late to do anything enjoyable with the rest of my day, and if I am having a rough day at work, 10 hours feels eternal. Story 15. I tried it for a while, but the last 2 hours were not at all productive for me. Story 16. I am currently burned out from working Monday through Friday, only to spend Saturday running around trying to decide whether to be social, do laundry, cook, and clean, or just sleep. I blink and it is Sunday night and I have to get ready to do it all. Again, my job mandates a 40-hour workweek, and I have been feeling extra tired lately. Working Monday through Thursday with 10-hour workdays would make my life much better, as I would have 3 days to be a human, with Fridays available for appointments. Story 17. It depends entirely on industry and role. If your value is derived from availability to see a customer or to respond to needs, the more days you are available, the better. If your value is derived strictly from production, a schedule of 4 10-hour days might make sense. However, neither option is conducive to families who need to drop off children at 8 o'clock and pick them up at 3 o'clock, or to those who cannot be confined to a workplace for 8 to 10 hours. Perhaps the real question is not the distribution of hours but sustainability for the family. Story 18. I am in favor of it. I work 4 10-hour days, so I may be biased. I have a 3-day weekend every week and a 4-day weekend when there is a holiday. Story 19. Everywhere I've ever worked that had this shift was always on overtime, so I ended up working 5 10-hour shifts. Story 20. Since productivity is up 68% and wages are stagnant, how about 32% of a 40-hour workweek? 12 hours and 48 minutes on Monday, then I am out. Story 21. I think many of these alternatives are good, but only if they truly fit the nature of the workflow. Often they do not. Story 22. Maybe we can stop the 10-hour, 5-day workweek first. Story 23. You do not get more done in 10 hours than in 8. A 4-day, 8-hour workweek will do just fine. For some, a 3-day, 8-hour workweek is just as productive as a 5-day, 8-hour workweek. Story 24. I have worked 4 10-hour days per week for 5 years now. We used to work 5 8-hour days before. At first, it was nice to have a 3-day weekend, however you eventually get used to it. The novelty wears off and then you are right back to feeling the same way you were prior to the schedule change. The only real downside is getting used to the extra 2 hours each day, especially at first. It does not sound like a lot, and it might not make sense if you have not actually worked the schedule to know how it feels firsthand, but those extra 2 hours feel like an eternity some days. Story 25. I tried 10-hour days and they were exhausting. The day off was mostly spent trying to recover. I will never do that again. Story 26. I prefer it. My job is flexible, and I can work from home, so it does not feel like I am missing time with my family. Story 27. I've worked that schedule before and personally I hate it. Yes, it was nice having Friday off, but Monday through Thursday felt gone. I would get home from work and not have the time or energy to do anything. As a result, all the little chores I normally do during the week piled into the weekend, meaning Friday was just chores I hadn't done during the week. Now a 4-9 schedule with a half-day Friday, or having every other Friday off, is much more tolerable. That hour between 9 and 10 is when I hit my wall. Story 28. I used to work 10-hour days, 8 days on and 6 days off. I loved that schedule. Then a chief executive officer bought the company and eliminated the jobs of more than 100 people to boost quarterly earnings by less than 0.01%. Story 29. It would be good to have the option, but I would not choose it that often. I am mentally drained after 8 or 9 hours. I could not do 10 consistently. Story 30. As someone who works 12-hour, 6-day weeks, I'll take either of those. Story 31. I did that for about 4 years until I had to stop working. It was nice being able to schedule appointments during the week. I had Monday off and worked Tuesday through Friday. That wasn't so bad because management would take Friday off, and I'd stop hearing from them after lunch on Thursday. I'd do it again if I could. Story 32. I did it while working at an insurance call center. It was absolute hell for me. Story 33. I used to do that during the summer. I am a custodian for a school district. 10 hours is a long shift, so now I work 8 hours, 4 days a week, and take a vacation day for the 5th day during most of the summer break. Story 34. My workplace offered it a couple of years ago. I would have done it when I was younger, but now that I have kids, they need to go to school 5 days a week, and someone has to cook their dinner at a reasonable time. Story 35. I just had this schedule approved, so I will get back to you in a month. I am doing this so my wife can work 3 days per week and we only have to use daycare one day. That will be a big benefit for our budget. I have heard that going early in the morning is the best approach. I will be working from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. How early I arrive depends on my lunch. I might only take a 30-minute break. Story 36. I would prefer it, but I have spent a large portion of my life working 7 days a week, so the 5-day workweek already feels quite tolerable to me. Story 37. My company is moving to 4 10.5-hour days, with the half-hour unpaid for lunch. The schedule will be Monday through Wednesday, Thursday off, and work on Friday. Story 38. These damn jobs would still find some lame-ass reason to make you work on Friday. Make overtime double time and watch mandatory overtime practically disappear. Story 39. I have been doing it for about 4 years now, and I am pretty sure it has made me lazier at work. Story 40. Given the absolutely insane lack of workers' rights in the United States, I would not be surprised if 10 hours a day, 6 days a week became the standard. Story 41. It does not work for single parents or for two working parents. Story 42. After working 10-hour days, I am not a fan if I am single and live alone. Cooking becomes difficult. You have to meal prep, otherwise you cannot do anything else. During the 4 workdays, there is nothing else to do beyond mandatory tasks. Story 43. I did it years ago and loved it. It was before cell phones and before bosses could reach out so easily. Story 44. I have done it and I hated it. I would much rather have an 8-hour 4-day work week. That is more realistic. Story 45. I have done it. You are so fatigued by the end of the 4th day that the first day off is spent recovering. I would much prefer a midweek or rotating day off, so your work schedule stays fresh. Story 46. A 10-hour, 4-day work week will soon become a 10-hour, 5-day work week. You can bank on it. Story 47. Counter offer. Increased automation in the workplace with a 6-hour, 4-day work week and most work done from home. Story 48. My company tried this and it slowly eroded into 10-hour days, 5 days a week for production reasons. 1 to 2 days of just-in-time safety stock turned into a requirement for 4 days. They even took on additional contracts to fill the 5th day with production and mandatory weekends. It was a scam to increase production and profit at the expense of employees. Story 49. No. My dad did that and one of my friends did too, but it's just too much for me. Story 50. My wife and I did that for a few years. We eventually returned to 5 8-hour days. We have the option to work 4 10-hour days if we need a 3-day week without paid time off, but we mostly used our Mondays off for laundry, grocery shopping, and chores around the house, things we did not have time for after a 10-hour shift plus commute. It felt like we worked longer days and then had long chore days at home instead of spreading a little work, a little housework, and a little play throughout the week. It became tiring to have long, intense days either way. My coworkers feel differently and still work 4 10-hour days, so maybe I am just weird. Story 51. It would not work for my family. My husband tried it for a while but switched to a different schedule because, working 4 days a week, he barely sees the kids. Story 52. 8 hours is already too much to work in a day. Most people are not productive for 8 hours, and extending the day to 10 hours will not solve the problem. People are also probably not productive for 5 days in a week at 8 hours per day. Story 53. I already work 10 hours a day on some days. Yes, 4 workdays per week would be excellent. Story 54. 3 8-hour days are preferable. I could tolerate 4 8-hour days, but I never liked 10-hour shifts. Story 55. I do not think most people can maintain sharpness and productivity for 10 hours, especially people over 40. I certainly cannot. Story 56. I worked at Walmart for exactly 1 year in the distribution center's non-conformance department. I could not meet production, so I was fired on my 1-year anniversary. The grind was hardcore, working the graveyard shift and usually staying extra hours to earn more money. It is not for older people. I was fairly fit but 47 years old. Hard hours for an old man. Story 57. Once there was a management position posted in my department for 3 days a week, 12 hours a day, Friday to Sunday, from 10 in the evening to 10 in the morning. I was very tempted. The person who got it had extremely mixed feelings and said those 3 days felt like a work marathon, and on the last day he often stayed to attend meetings until noon. After he left the role, no one else showed interest, so they closed it. Story 58. I have done it. It is tough on a two-earner family with children, but it is better than working 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, for both flexible workers and employers. Story 59. I have mostly worked 12-hour days, 4 days on and 4 days off, for at least the last 25 years. For 3 consecutive years during that period, I worked 60 to 72 hours a week with 1 day off. So a 40-hour week, whether 4 days or 5, feels like a vacation to me. I would rather work 10-hour days and have 3 days off if given the choice. It is kind of a moot point now since I took early retirement last year. Story 60. A long commute makes a 4-day workweek more beneficial. If the commute is short, it is less important. Story 61. Sign me up, but you must get all my clients to agree to the same thing. Story 62. I think that with advances in technology, automation, and artificial intelligence, we should not be expected to work a set number of hours to be considered productive. Soon we will have to reevaluate our economic system. If we enter an age where most jobs are eliminated, how will people earn money to pay for necessities? Story 63. How about a 4-day workweek with 8 hours each day, but we get paid for 40 hours? Story 64. Hear me out. Abolish the 40-hour workweek that has existed since 1926. Excel, Teams, and now even artificial intelligence have exponentially increased human productivity. Raise wages and reduce hours. There is no reason to work the same number of hours while productivity rises and pay increases remain meager. Story 65. Terrible. I work 8 hours a day, for days a week, just like most people around me. While I would not mind the increase in pay, it is not worth sacrificing my free time. Story 66. This is not good. The employee becomes tired. Those 2 extra hours are a steep climb, and overall productivity declines. Story 67. I have done it, and I could get the same results from 4 8-hour days. I was an electrician, and when it comes to labor, the end of the day is filled with mistakes. Story 68. I worked that shift for about 5 years when I was fresh out of college. It was great to have 3-day weekends, but the 4-day weeks were really just work. I now have children and am happy I work a traditional 5-day, 8-hour schedule. It better aligns with school and daycare schedules and gives me more time and energy on weekdays to play with my children and to have a little personal time before daycare pickup. Story 69. A 3-day weekend is crucial. You need 1 day for errands, 1 day to recover from the errands, and 1 day to sit in absolute dread of the 4-day work week ahead. It is the perfect cycle. Story 70. My preferred schedule is 3 12-hour shifts with 4 days off. I require a livable wage for 36 hours per week. Story 71. I have been doing 4 10-hour shifts for about 13 years now. Honestly, I put up with a lot that I would not otherwise just to keep the schedule. It is worth it. Story 72. I wonder how changes like this actually happen. Somehow we moved from a worse arrangement to the current 5-day workweek. From 35 years working in Silicon Valley offices, I do not expect employers to lead the change. Look at the reversals on remote work. Local traffic is bad again because people commute long hours so their bosses can be certain they are at work rather than shopping or socializing during the day. A business owner told me that friends at Apple do their work at night so they can shop and socialize during the day. My response, as it has been for over 30 years, is this: if managers ensure the work gets done, why does it matter? She had no answer. She simply does not like it. With good employees and managers, there is no problem. Pay people what their work is worth and they will deliver. Why require employees to be chained to a physical desk when everyone is already tied to devices? Every job should have hours appropriate to the work. It is time to abandon the standard workweek, which often does not apply. Physical jobs might work better with 3-day weeks and separate shifts. Work schedules could also account for employees' age to prioritize health. If workers do not accept pay levels, they will change jobs. Companies that need those roles will have to offer higher pay or better benefits, such as shorter or more flexible hours. Some wages may fall for roles that employers do not value, but the market will adjust, and this should ultimately benefit workers. Story 73. I work that shift from Monday through Thursday. I leave work no later than 5 p.m. each day. I love it. Story 74. Call me crazy, but I like a day off on Wednesdays. I never work more than 2 days in a row. Story 75. I will take it. Even if it is not 3 days in a row, where I am now I have to take a whole day off for any appointments. Story 76. I am working on it right now, and it is way better than a 5-day week. Story 77. Good for you but tough on your partner when it comes to helping with the kids. Story 78. It is far too much. 32 hours is more than enough. When we compromised on 40 hours, we had manual dictation, typewriters, snail mail, and it included paid lunch. Now we have robots, cameras, automatic data processing, email, and self-checkout. We could easily be at 20 hours per week for full-time work. Story 79. The maximum number of hours per day most people can work in a deeply concentrated state is about 4. After 4 hours, I feel like I have run a marathon with my job. A 10-hour workday of sustained productivity is not effective, nor are 8 or 6-hour days. I should work about 4 to 5 days a week, 5 hours per day, for maximum efficiency. Story 80. I would rather do that. I usually end up doing it now because I can control my own schedule to some extent. Having that 3-day weekend makes going and doing things so much easier. Story 81. I think it is awesome. I am ending the 8-hour, 5-day workweek at the end of this week and will switch to 4 10-hour days starting next week. I tried that schedule a couple of months ago during a busy week. I did not think I would be able to manage it, but it was easy. I woke up at 5:15 a.m. and worked from 6 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Story 82. I work 7 on, 7 off, 12-hour days. 86 hours a week. Story 83. Fuck. Only working 10 hours a day and a 3-day weekend? Where do I sign up? Story 84. That's how I am currently scheduled. From 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday 1 week, and from Tuesday through Friday the next week. That gives you a 4-day weekend every other weekend. I have a commute of more than an hour that includes tolls, so cutting out the 5th day helps a great deal. Having a weekday off is also helpful for appointments that would otherwise require a sick day or a vacation day. Story 85. It depends on what you do. Long ago, I did landscaping from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Thursday. It was great. Story 86. I would love it. I work from home, so without a commute I could enjoy it. If I had to commute, I might feel differently. Story 87. I used to work 4 10-hour shifts, but the schedule was split. I worked Tuesday and Wednesday, had Thursday off, worked Friday and Saturday, and had Sunday and Monday off. It was my favorite schedule. I had 2 weekdays off and never had to work more than 2 days in a row. It was amazing. Story 88. I would much prefer to work a 4-day, 10-hour day schedule. After an 8-hour day, you have to start all over again. With those extra 2 hours, you can actually finish a project, and you have earned a great long weekend. Story 89. I work 10 hours a day from Monday through Thursday. I fucking love it. Story 90. If a 40-hour week is required, I much prefer 4 10-hour days. My husband works 4 9-hour days, and it is great. The days are not too long, and he gets 3-day weekends. Story 91. As someone who was salaried and who constantly worked 10, 11, or 12 or more hours per day, a fixed schedule of 10 hours a day for 4 days sounds lovely. Story 92. When I was salaried, 10-hour plus days were the norm. I would have liked it limited to a 10-hour, 4-day schedule. Story 93. I have been doing it for the past 4 years, and my company has mandated that we return to the 980 work schedule. I am looking forward to it. 10-hour days are incredibly long. Most Fridays I am so beat I just do whatever chore I need to do that day, and then rot on my couch. It just feels better. Story 94. I don't see much difference in the work. I do like a 3-day weekend. Story 95. I used to work 12-hour days, 3 days 1 week and 4 days the next, alternating. I received overtime during the long week and worked from home for years. It was wonderful. Being off 3 or 4 days a week felt magical, especially because I was at home even when I was working. Story 96. It would be great if you had access to free childcare or had no children. Story 97. I'm all about working, but that work should pay rent, bills, healthcare, and allow saving for the future. Story 98. It's amazing. Just having a business day off makes such a big difference, and 2 extra hours at work really isn't a big deal. 2 days do not feel like enough, but 3 is the sweet spot. Story 99. I have been doing it for years and I prefer it. When work gets busy, it turns into 5-10 hour days, but I get paid overtime if I work over 40 hours despite being salaried. It's pretty nice. Story 100. I work 4 10-hour overnight shifts from 5:30 p.m. to 4 a.m., and I love it. My drive home is great with almost no traffic, and I get 3 days off. My girlfriend does not like the hours so much, but she likes my pay. Story 101. I did it, and after a while we wanted to change back to 5 days. In my opinion, having flexibility would be a huge improvement. Story 102. I have been doing it for 13 years and I will never go back to working Fridays. Story 103. I worked those shifts Monday through Thursday, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. They gave us a shift premium. I liked it. Story 104. I thought I would love it, but I did not. I would probably enjoy it in my current role, though. Story 105. I would prefer that. 2 days off is limiting as it is. 3 days would be more useful. Story 106. Love it. I used to have that shift from Sunday through Wednesday. Story 107. I do not mind working 5 days a week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. as long as my position remains remote. If I must go to the office every day, I will prefer a 4-day workweek. Story 108. I get 4 to 10 in the summer, 5 to 8 in the winter. I am not complaining. Story 109. 100%. I do not have a big, fancy salary job. I am paid by the hour. Let me work my 40 hours in the shortest time I am capable of so I can have a large amount of personal time to enjoy my life. Story 110. It is still problematic because they assign you to be on call on your days off. Story 111. I've done that before. Unless you start early, it is exhausting. I used to work from 10 in the morning to 8 in the evening. You would need to work from 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening, which would be draining. We have a partial flexible schedule now. You work 1 extra hour per day, 30 minutes for an earlier start and 30 minutes less lunch than the usual 60 minutes. You get an extra day off every other week. It is much better. That is an extra 26 days off per year. If your flex day falls on a holiday, you get an extra day as well. Story 112. I have been doing this for years. I love having 3-day weekends. Story 113. In my experience, you work an 8-hour day, then spend 2 hours waiting for it to end. I could not focus effectively for 10 hours at a stretch. Others have no problem with it. The business must provide full service windows, so employees must schedule coverage accordingly. Story 114. I did this at a few jobs. Having a 3-day weekend all the time is amazing. Story 115. I currently work a 9-hour, 4-day workweek. I am happy with it. Story 116. I would much rather have 3-day weekends than 2-day weekends. I wish that were a thing. Story 117. I just took a pay cut of $5 an hour to move to a schedule of 4 10-hour days, leaving a 3-2-2-3 12-hour rotation. I love having every weekend off and seeing my family. Story 118. I have done this for the last 2 years. I cannot go back to 5 8-hour shifts. One schedule worth considering is 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 2 days off. You never work more than 2 days in a row. Story 119. The one plant I work with has switched to this and I have not heard from a single person who wants to go back to 5/8. Story 120. It depends entirely on the job and the person. I work a 10-hour, 4-day schedule. It is backbreaking because it is warehouse work. I am always in the top 5% in productivity nationally. Story 121. For 10-hour workdays are better. With an extra day off during the week, you can get everything done and then enjoy a legitimate weekend doing what you want. Story 122. I think I would hate that more than the current schedule. It is the same amount of time spent selling your body to survive. Story 123. I think you could trim it down to 4 hours and still be productive. Why do we accept wasting our days stressing and grinding? We do it to ourselves because we have agreed that money is more important than anything. It is depressing. Story 124. I currently work 5 to 11-hour days, so if it pays the same, I will take it. If not, I will continue my grind so I can pay my bills and support my future self. Story 125. It only works in industries that can shut down with no consequences. This does not work in emergency services, hospitals, law enforcement, and similar sectors because they operate 24 hours a day, and 8-hour shifts work much better than 10-hour shifts for 24-hour operations. Story 126. My schedule has been like this for the past 4 years. It is pretty awesome. I would have a hard time going back to a 5-day workweek. Early mornings can be difficult, and it takes a while to adjust to a 10-hour day. It is more difficult to get much done in the evening. A 3-day weekend every week is fantastic. Story 127. I work 10-hour days, 3 days on and 3 days off. It is much better than 5 days on and 2 days off. Story 128. It is my schedule now. I do not love the 10-hour days. I love the 3-day weekends. Story 129. My favorite schedule was when I worked 3 12-hour shifts. Tuesday through Thursday was rough, but a 4-day weekend every week was very nice, and we were paid for 40 hours despite only working 36. Story 130. I worked 12-hour shifts 3 days a week, and sometimes 4 days a week. The extended time off was well worth it. Story 131. Depends on what you're doing. Working in retail? No problem, give me 10. Roofing? I'll take 8. Story 132. I had 4 10-hour days in my first warehouse job in 2000. It was great. 3 days off every week. And when a holiday rolled around, a little manipulation and calling in sick could lead to a 6-day weekend. Awesome. Story 133. I work them right now, and that 3rd day off makes a difference. Story 134. Do you expect the restaurants and shops to still be open whenever? Story 135. I have worked on this schedule and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would do it again if given the chance. Story 136. I have worked a 10-hour, 4-day workweek for the better part of the last decade. It is probably the only way I have stayed at my generic corporate soul-sucking job that pays the bills. Story 137. I'm a physical therapist, so I have the schedule flexibility to do this and have tried it on occasion. I like it in spurts, but 10-hour days really wear on you, especially if your job is physically demanding or person-facing. The 3-day weekend is nice, but Thursday nights typically end up being a wash because you are exhausted from the week, and Friday is spent recovering. In my experience, I did not get the recuperation I needed from a 3-day weekend to be ready to face 4 straight 10-hour shifts again. 2 things I have liked more personally are 4 10-hour shifts with the day off on Wednesday instead of Friday. That splits the week in half, and every workday is either coming off a day off or has a day off the next day. Alternatively, I have really enjoyed 4 9-hour days and then a half day on Friday, which makes Friday feel much more manageable mentally without too much extra strain during the week. In reality, we should just go to 4 8-hour days and prioritize enjoying our short lives, but that will never happen in the United States. Story 138. That's my schedule right now, and I love it. I am honestly thinking about taking a second job for some extra spending money since I have so much free time. Story 139. I currently work 4 10-hour days and absolutely love it. I have that extra day for doctor and dentist appointments, to have my vehicle serviced, or to go away for a 3-day weekend. Story 140. I did it for a while when I was younger and liked it, although my wife did not. I am not sure how I would feel about it now that I am old and creaky. Story 141. This is a scam. The 40-hour work week effectively presumes an additional 40 hours of unpaid labor at home. Dual-income households should receive equal pay for 20-hour work weeks. We have been swindled out of 20 hours per week. Story 142. I have worked a 4-day, 10-hour schedule for the past 10 years. Takes some getting used to, but it works. 3-day weekends and 4-day holiday weekends are pretty cool. Story 143. As a nurse who worked 4 12-hour shifts in a row and then had 6 days off, it was exhausting. The first day off was a write-off, and as I got older, the second day off was unpleasant. This made me realize nursing is a difficult career. Story 144. I currently work 10-hour shifts and really enjoy the 3-day weekends. They make it much easier to finish my chores and still have time for myself. Story 145. Iceland tested 4-day workweeks and found a solution that works well. Look to Iceland. It is not extra time to meet the imaginary 40-hour threshold. Story 146. I work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, so I would not mind a shorter workweek. My boss told me this morning that he arrived at work at 1 in the morning and probably will not leave until 3 in the afternoon. He was in a very bad mood with everyone. I do not blame him. He deserves a 4-day workweek for the long days he works. Story 147. I had that for about 4 years and it was great. I could go shopping when the stores weren't full and get in to see the doctor. I was tired the first morning after the 4 long days, but I had plenty of time to recover. Story 148. I wish I were still on a 10-by-4 schedule. Having Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays off was fantastic. Story 149. As of right now, it makes no difference, and the money is not enough to make a living. Story 150. I have been doing it for 20 years and would never give it up. The extra day off is so much more important than 2 additional hours on each workday. I currently work Sunday through Wednesday, with Thursday, Friday, and Saturday off every week. Thursday is my errands day. It is great because most people are at work. Story 151. It is something we have been asking for at work for years, but it just does not work because we would lose a lot of coverage and there would be too much overlap between the morning and evening shifts. The way I see it, it would reduce my commutes by about 50 days a year. Since it takes me about an hour to get ready and about an hour for the round-trip commute, that saves me about 10 days a year. Story 152. I had that schedule at my last job. It was great. When I first started on night shift, my hours were 2 p.m. to midnight Wednesday through Saturday. And there was another night shift Sunday through Wednesday. Day shift was Monday through Thursday, so I worked with day shift and management for about 6 hours a week. Story 153. I would almost take a pay cut to have that again. 3 days off in a row. I requested 2 days of paid time off and ended up with the equivalent of a week off without using much of it. I loved that. Story 154. I have done it before and I liked it. I have also worked 3 12-hour shifts followed by a half day, but in my 60s I am not sure it is something I would want to do now. Story 155. I have done a 4-day workweek with 10-hour days. I loved it. A 3-day weekend actually lets you relax. You get an extra weekday to run errands, holiday weekends become true long weekends, and it is easier to travel out of town for a weekend. Story 156. I work 4 10-hour shifts and then have 3 days off. It is amazing. I would not change it at all. Story 157. I love my 4-day schedule of 8.5 hours per day. I will never work 5 days a week again if I can help it. Story 158. 40-hour workweeks are overrated. A 32-hour week is sufficient. If a company cannot run effectively with a 32-hour week, it needs better managers. Many people would welcome a 32-hour job. Employers could increase staffing and operate 7 days a week more productively with 3 overlapping 32-hour shifts. One group works Monday through Thursday, another works Friday through Monday, and a third works Tuesday through Friday. On Saturday and Sunday, there are fewer staff on hand. You could assign part of the maintenance team to that shift to perform tasks when fewer people are present. Alternatively, schedule full overlap on weekends and lighter coverage during the week if your business volume is slower on weekdays, as is common in some industries. Story 159. It's the way to go. Having a 10-hour day can be tiring at times, but when Friday comes around, that 3-day weekend makes it all worth it. Story 160. Game changer. I went from 5 8-hour shifts to a schedule of 3 12-hour days followed by 4 days off, then 4 12-hour days followed by 3 days off, and finally to a schedule of 4 10-hour days. The 4 10-hour day schedule is probably the best, because the 3 on, 4 off 12-hour rotation can be soul-crushing during the long work weeks. I will never work 5 days a week again. It is dumb. Story 161. The working week does not need to be 40 hours, and people should discard the outdated notion that work is measured by hours rather than productivity. The 5 8-hour day model was already arbitrary. There is extensive evidence that people can be more productive working 5 or 6-hour days in some industries, and in some cases even 3-day workweeks. Story 162. I work 4 12-hour rotating shifts followed by 4 days off. For 10-hour shifts are not bad because you have an extra day to get things done. I would say it is a plus in that sense. Story 163. I work 12-hour shifts and I love it. One week I'll work 36 hours, but the next week I'll work 48 hours, including 8 hours of overtime. Story 164. It should be mandatory. I've thought about this for a long time. You give your job 71% of your week when you work 5 days. It drops to 59% when you work 4. If you have 3 days off, one will be guaranteed to fall on a weekday. Now you do not have to call off or use sick time to see a doctor. 3 days off, 1 day to recover, 1 day to relax or get things done, and 1 day to prepare for work. Meal prep if you want on the last day. How many of us give up by Friday? Most of us. We get far less done because we are burned out. In my office, everyone leaves early that day. Let's eliminate the 5th workday. Adding 2 extra hours to an 8-hour day is not bad. I'm already there. It does not require any extra effort on my part. And my reward? An extra day off every week. Sign the contract. Story 165. I tried it because my job is unionized and I could bid for that schedule. I hated it. Working an extra 2 hours a day for an extra day off did not pay off for me. I work in sales and customer service, so I always had to be on. In a less stressful job, I could see it being viable. Story 166. 6 10-hour shifts for the last 5 years. Retiring in 2 months at 58. For 10-hour shifts or 4 8-hour shifts would add 6 to 8 years to that. Story 167. It was not terrible, but not great. You had to accept that you would have no social life during the week. Having a free weekday to do appointments and chores and using the weekend to relax was very nice. However, I had just moved and needed to meet people, and many activities were on weeknights while I was still working, so that was hard. Story 168. I had a job like this at university during the summer, and it was amazing. I wish I could do it again. Story 169. I used to work 4 10-hour days. It was great having half the week off, especially as a homebody who slept irregularly on my days off. Story 170. I love it. My work does that for 10 weeks in the summer, and I hate going back to 2-day weekends. Story 171. Honestly, a 10-hour, 4-day workweek sounds like a dream until you realize Friday feels like a Monday in disguise. Fewer mornings fighting traffic and more long weekends to recover. Story 172. During office hours, I work 10 hours per day, 5 days a week, and on Saturdays I work only 5 hours. That would be amazing, but that will never happen for me. Story 173. Good. More time with my kids. My company is considering switching to a 4-day workweek, so I am excited. Story 174. I worked there for years and loved it. For the last 6 years, I worked a schedule of 4 days on and 4 days off with 10-hour shifts. I liked that schedule too. Story 175. No, I can't do 10-hour days, especially since you rarely leave work exactly when the official workday ends. Once you account for commute time and getting ready in the morning, it is basically a 12-hour day. There is no time for anything else. I would much rather find a way to have a 4-day, 8-hour workweek or 5 days of 6 hours. Story 176. I prefer it. I have done both. I would not mind 12-hour days with the 4th day alternating on and off, or 20-hour days with a day off in between. I work in maintenance, so reduced hours such as 4 8-hour days are not feasible for us. We need coverage in case something happens, and unlike office work, a larger share of our hours is productive, so fewer hours would reduce the amount of work completed. Story 177. I am self-employed. Hours mean little. Some days are 8 hours, some are 18, and some are 6. Today was 4. I work until the job is done. Often I send my employee home and continue working. Story 178. I've been working 4 8-hour days a week for most of this year, taking Wednesday and the weekend off. It's the happiest I've ever been in my career. My workload has not decreased. In fact, my output has increased a bit because I can give my full effort almost every day now. I am dreading going back to 5-day weeks next year. I do not think I could handle 10-hour days. That is 2 fewer hours to see my child, help with household tasks, and do non-work activities. Story 179. I did that for years as well as 3-day work weeks. Both are much better than working 5 days a week. You cannot really relax with only 2 days off. Story 180. Boo. Imagine if the benefits of automation since the dawn of the industrial age were shared with the workers instead of hoarded by those at the top. Story 181. I am a nurse, and I work 3 12-hour shifts. Honestly, I love this schedule. Sure, the hours are long and working nights is slowly killing me, but I get so much free time which is worth more than gold to me. Story 182. Our group became too small and switched back to 5 8-hour days. It was long but nice to have a weekday to schedule appointments without using personal time. Story 183. If it is 4 consecutive weekdays, great. However, most companies use 3 shifts and a donut shift. Sunday, shift A on, shifts B and C off. Monday, shifts A and C on, shift B off. Tuesday, shifts A and C on, shift B off. Wednesday, shifts A and B on, shift C off. Thursday, shifts B and C on, shift A off. Friday, shifts B and C on, shift A off. Saturday, shift B on, shifts A and C off. Saturdays and Sundays have 1 shift. Monday through Friday have 2 shifts. The donut shift does not work on Wednesday. Story 184. What is the point of working? Seriously, the whole purpose should be to ensure we all have enough shelter, clothing, and food. Our society produces these things in massive quantities. We throw out tons of food and clothing every day. There are many vacant places to live. We have enough shelter to provide for everyone. So why are we all working so hard? Because there is a distribution problem. We are working our asses off and there is enough of everything, yet for some reason it all gets funneled to a small number of people who live like gods. What is the point? Give us our damn 4-day, 8-hour work week. Screw it. Give us a 4-day, 5-hour work week. I do not even want it for slacking off. I just want time to do my chores and not feel like I am drowning. Story 185. I don't know. It just means I have 2 more hours during the workday to pretend I am doing anything. Story 186. Assuming it is practical for the business, I think it is a good idea. However, consider the time for preparation and travel for most people, and the time spent setting up, getting coffee, and turning everything on. It may be more productive to work an extra 2 hours, which could leave the employee with more free time, since they would not have to get up and get ready on their day off. It is not new. Nurses and other groups have often had these schedules. Some work 12-hour shifts 3 days one week and 4 days the next. I have actually gone the other way. I work from home now. Sometimes I work more hours per day, sometimes less. Although I probably work more hours overall, the flexibility to take a lighter day when I do not feel like working, to power through when I am in a groove, or to take time off at short notice and make up the work later is more appealing to me. Story 187. It makes for 4 very long days when you add in lunch and the commute, but I prefer it to working 5 days. Story 188. I wish it were offered more often at more workplaces. I would rather work 4 10-hour days and have an extra day off to take care of my home, schedule appointments without using as much paid time off, and have more flexibility for car maintenance. It would also make life much easier when I have children because it would help reduce childcare costs. Story 189. I have a pretty interesting work schedule. We call them rotators. All 10-hour shifts and no Sundays, which is nice. Here is how it goes. Work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Off Sunday. Work Monday, Tuesday. Off Wednesday, Thursday. Work Friday, Saturday. Off Sunday. Work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then I am off for 5 days, Friday through Tuesday. That full rotation repeats every month. It is a strange rhythm, but I have gotten used to it. The long stretch off every month is a huge perk. Story 190. $69 per hour for 20 hours a week. It is feasible if we stop prioritizing shareholders. All their wealth comes from underpaying people for their labor. Story 191. I would need an additional meal break or snack breaks at the midway points between the start, the meal, and the end. Story 192. Evidence, mostly from short-term studies, indicates that 4-day workweeks improve employee well-being and self-reported productivity. Studies, including private research, consistently find that productivity increases. Story 193. How about 3 days or 20 hours based on our massive gains in productivity? Story 194. I took a 10% pay cut and now work 4 9-hour days. I work flexible hours, so I often work 7 or 8 hours during the day and another 1 to 2 hours at night. I would not recommend it for the long term. I love my dedicated day off, but the late night sessions are getting pretty rough. Story 195. What is there to think about? Many jobs offer that exact schedule. If that is appealing to you, go for it. Story 196. Sleep all day on the first day off from exhaustion. Spend your last dime on the second and third days. Repeat. Story 197. Why do we need to make it 10 hours? 6 hours times 4 days is more than enough for many jobs. Anything beyond that should be paid as overtime. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.